Good afternoon, everybody. We'll just give everybody a chance to get into the room. Bear with us for just a moment. Welcome, everybody. I still see some folks coming into the room, so we'll just give one more minute for folks to get settled. Hey, hi, everybody. Welcome to the RDLA quarterly webinar. This one is called Share Your Story through social media. And I know you're used to seeing a different face leading these webinars, so let me introduce myself. I'm a fairly new member of the Every Life Foundation team. I've been here for about 3 months. My name is Margot Metzger. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing and Public Relations. So along with my team, I work every day to tell stories that affect policy change. And of course, social media is such an important way that we share our story, but it's so important for our advocates to share their story that way as well. So we've got a fantastic lineup of 4 panelists who will provide tips and tricks on how to best share your rare disease story, how to engage with your audiences, and what's trending when it comes to communicating across various social platforms. And if time allows, we will take questions at the end of all the presentations. You can add your questions to the Q&A function here on Zoom. Also, feel free to engage in a chat with the group or with individuals. All those features are available, but we do ask that if you have a specific question for a panelist, to put that in the Q&A. And we'll try to get to those at the end. So let's get started. First up, we have Sarah Mumper. She's going to talk to us about the benefits. Oh, sorry, housekeeping. Let me back up 1 second. If you prefer to call into the webinar, if you're having any technical difficulty, you can use this phone number on the screen. You can also enable closed captioning for Zoom. Just look at the live transcript button on the bottom of your Zoom window. If you have any other issues throughout, just feel free to put those in the chat. Here is our fantastic group of panelists. I'm going to introduce them one by one as we go through. So first up, we have Sarah Mumper. She is a disability advocate. She's going to talk to us about the benefits of social media presence with advocacy on TikTok, Instagram, and on the web. Sarah is an advocate with McCune-Albright's syndrome, fibrous dysplasia, also known as FDMAS. She's a member of the FDMAS Alliance Patient Advisory Council and volunteers with them. Through the use of social media, she's found ways to connect with others in the chronic illness rare disease community, and especially with others diagnosed with MAS and FD. She's constantly learning from others on how to advocate through awareness, education, community, and legislation. And she's here to talk about the benefits of social media advocacy. Welcome, Sarah. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Margot. I just want to say thank you to RDLA and the Every Life Foundation for inviting me to speak to you guys today. I just wanted to share my experience and my tips and tricks from social media advocacy and the ways that it could benefit you, or if you weren't sure if you wanted to try it out yourself and how to get started. So I figured I would start by sharing a little bit more about myself and my story with social media. Can I get the next slide, please? Thank you. So as I was introduced, I'm Sarah. I'm 27 years old. I'm a California native, and I was born with a rare genetic condition that has me using a wheelchair, walker, crutches, and that's really gotten me into the disabled community. I work full-time for a company that has prioritized my needs as a disabled person, and I have been an active advocate for about 5 years, doing public speaking, been on a couple of podcasts, and writing a couple of blog posts. And I found a way to empower myself with others through storytelling with my social media page and telling my experience and showing the human side of living with a rare disease. So my start with social media actually began in 2014. I graduated high school that year, and I found a connection with a friend of mine who had cancer her sophomore to junior year, which had her coming into my graduating class. And we realized that we have such a sense of humor when it comes to a lot of the difficulties that we go through, both with her parents who were her caregivers, my parents as my caregivers, and just how our family coped with humor. So we wanted to show that human side of ourselves, and we started a blog. Our blog was called Albright Cancer, a combination of my disease and hers. And we would just write about ourselves, about our experience of the diagnosis, to what we did in our day-to-day to humanize us as the person. And in 2019, I actually created my own website where I housed my own personal blog at the time, and then eventually transitioned it to an online portfolio and resources to help others kind of get started, consult for different groups as to the benefits of social media and bringing awareness, education, and resources to the community. I also turned my Instagram from a personal account to a business profile. And this allowed me to have a lot larger outreach as a content creator, and being able to have certain resources that Instagram and Facebook offer to be able to utilize those to expand that reach. And in 2020, though the world may have shut down, I got really, really busy. I was published in the Daily Mail about my diagnosis and kind of how I've been able to overcome the day-to-day difficulties and still be able to live a long and fulfilling life. I had everything else kind of snowball from there, from being on several podcasts, speaking to a couple of college classes about my experience as a disabled person, and bringing awareness to, inclusivity, whether it's in the workplace, college, different things like that, and kind of empowering others to speak up who either have somebody in their life who are also experiencing the same things I am, or they themselves are experiencing firsthand. I've been able to get affiliations with different companies as well through that, and being able to work with different companies that align with kind of the vision of inclusivity. And the importance of creating this social presence has a lot to do with, one, building community. Us getting together today is building community. We're getting together, we're able to meet with one another, we're able to learn from each other's experiences, and that's a big part of a social media presence. I have my Instagram and my TikTok profile here. I just wanted to show a couple of examples of how to get connected within your community. With your bio, you can always put in hashtags that are really important to you if you're part of a specific group, or if your group has a profile that's separate from your personal, you can always tag that in there, and it actually links directly to them. I put a campsite URL in my bio too, because it allows me to put multiple links. So it allows my resources to be expanded past just my website. You also have the opportunity to pin certain posts, both on TikTok and Instagram. And for me, I have my top 3 being, what is McCune-Albright syndrome? Because at the very core of it, I am an advocate for my disease. I want to help bring awareness. I want to build community. And by doing so, I'm building engagement. And building engagement kind of helps with that flow of, you're going to have maybe one viral post or you're involved in a movement, you're being able to experience what's happening in the world. And whether you're commenting on other people's pages, watching different webinars, encouraging other people to watch these webinars, or being involved with support groups, things like that is really important. And being able to bring awareness both to whether it's your own specific cause or a greater cause for the community. And this helps creating a larger change, and the change of getting people interested and getting people to know, why is this important? And by telling your story is the way for them to understand, wow, this is really important. This can actually be affecting, 1 out of 10 people in my life, or I may not know what somebody is going through. So it helps change some perspectives of others being able to educate themselves within this community. And with sharing on social media, I found the power of being your authentic self. I wanted to share a couple of comments that I received and a post that I had created of a picture of me crying, pretty much just bundled up in bed. A lot of times in social media, you see people only posting the highlights and the things that they want you to see, and it feels very curated. I found that within the chronic illness community, as well as just being who I am and sharing both the ups and the downs, I've been able to get so much more engagement and connection, and very personable connections because of that. And knowing that I'm not alone. And a lot of times caregivers, patients, doctors, researchers feel like they are just going this alone. And it really does help sharing what you're going through, obviously to what you're most comfortable with, and knowing that, hey, I'm not alone in this. I have support. This is the community that you've created, that you've built up, that you've been able to connect with, and being able to find at least one person makes a great change with that. So my top 3 tips and tricks that I hope you guys at least take away from today is create as much content as you can in one day. If you're looking to start on TikTok, Instagram, post on Facebook, blog posts, whatever it may be, a lot of these platforms allow you to put things in drafts. So whether you just want to spend a whole day filming everything because you're making videos, or you want to take pictures, or whatever it is that you want to do, writing a couple of articles, save it, write it down, carve out a chunk of your day, and then maybe have a separate day where you edit everything. Because a lot of times people get very overwhelmed and burnt out from doing all of these things. And it really does help if you just schedule in the time. Because a lot of times we all have either full-time jobs, or we're working multiple part-time jobs, or we're caring for somebody, whatever it may be. This helps kind of take that load off of you. My second tip is to stay up to date on current events, whether it's what's happening in the legislation that you're interested in being a part of, special holidays like Rare Disease Day, webinars like today, social movements like Right on Flights, anything that is connected to your specific organization. Like I have Global Awareness Week during the week of Rare Disease Day for my group of the FDMAS Alliance. That's something that I'm going to post about. That's what I'm going to educate people about. Something that interests you, that is current and up to date, that people can also relate to, is a way for you to utilize that in your social presence. And lastly, I can't emphasize this enough, just be yourself. There's nothing better than you showing who you are, because people love you as a person, and as much as you share on social media, people will be able to connect with that as well. Thank you guys so much for just listening to me today. If you do want to get connected, I did put my socials up there and my email as well. And let's get connected on LinkedIn. And I'm happy to help you guys in any way you can if you have any other questions.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I love that idea of kind of the content creation blitz, where you can, come up with a lot all at once and then space it out when you deliver it. That's a really smart idea. Thanks so much.
That definitely helped for sure.
Great. Okay. Next up, I am happy to introduce our next speaker. Patrick Kotnick is the marketing and PR coordinator at the BDSRA Foundation. He's going to share tips on utilizing storytelling on social media from an organizational perspective and a little bit about Patrick. His duties include content creation, website maintenance, graphic design, copywriting and editing, video, and messaging for both internal and external audiences. He manages all the social platforms for BDSRA, the Illuminator newsletter, website, and content for their events. So welcome, Patrick. Thanks for being with us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I want to start by emphasizing that this presentation is intended to provide ideas based on my personal experience and BDSRA's experience, but I do encourage those watching and listening to pursue anything that they believe might be improvements over what I present or could be more effective, just because the approaches and results may be different based on our situations and audience. Next slide, please. So before we even get into storytelling on social media, I want to start by getting to know your audience. And you can do that by just talking to people. That can be people in your community. It can be people in your organization. Me personally, I found a lot of value in talking to my coworkers. We have an annual family conference every year, and talking to people and families there. Other conferences, talking to people there, and even colleagues who might be in who are in marketing and PR, but may not be in the rare disease community. And also researching the rare disease ahead of time and the content previously produced on BDSRA social media channels helped me out a lot. By doing this, I mean, again, it kind of starts the whole, getting to know your audience, and that can eventually shape your content strategy and what you want to put on social media. After you begin to talk to people, survey them if you have the tools. We have previously used SurveyMonkey more recently for a virtual event survey, and that was about hey, would you attend these virtual events? What days would you prefer to have them on? What time would you prefer to attend these events or for these events to be held? And we've also had Google Forms, for feedback that we've sent. And also, if you have a mailing list, I mean, that definitely helps too. But that's how you can build those relationships and understand the community that you're serving. And then the next after that is building trust, and you can do that by being there for your community and delivering for them. You can do that by keeping them up to date on events and the latest news, especially when it comes to research and clinical trials. Help them out as best as you can. I mean, that can be just answering any questions they have, any advice that they're seeking. Be there for them as much as you possibly can during this journey, because we all know the rare disease journey is not easy at all. And also, the way you can build that trust is to highlight resources and events that your organization may offer. Like that can be if you have conferences and events that they can attend, if you have virtual events that they can attend, grant programs. The more you can highlight these kind of resources, and the more that you can highlight how you can help them, then you can begin to build that trust a little bit more. Next slide, please. So getting to know your audience here, I mean, you can discover content ideas by getting to know your audience. And you can begin to build that foundation for social media storytelling. So all these questions here that I have on the slide, like how do they first hear of your organization? What do they want to know? What are their communication preferences? Do they follow the organization on your social media channels? The answers to these questions can help improve your social media presence and your approach. And I recommend finding out what your community wants to know. What do they want to see? What do they want to hear about? A piece of advice that has stuck with me since when I was a student at West Virginia University, a mentor of mine told me that coming up with content ideas is extremely important, but if you have an idea for a story or a video that no one really cares about, then no one's gonna read or watch and listen. And that doesn't mean produce clickbait content. That means you want to produce results, and you want to produce content based on what they care about. What do they want to know? What's important to them? And asking these questions can help build your approach to reaching out to more families. For example, our content for Newborn Screening Awareness Month last month in September, that was inspired by an email that we got from a Batten mother asking all kinds of questions about newborn screening. And also an interview that I did with 4 Batten disease mothers who, and one of them had mentioned that they had provided testimony for RUSP alignment legislation. Um, Questions about clinical trials during the pandemic when trials are being shut down um, and they were being dropped, especially 2021, 2022. There were a lot of questions being asked by families to us, what's going on? And that led to our most attended webinar, which featured a panel of researchers and clinicians that we work with who discussed the current state of biotech. And also, it was before I arrived at BDSRA, but we also had a communication preferences survey that told us, what they prefer. And, we've learned from that they prefer email. That has shaped our strategy recently, where we'll post on social media and then we'll send an email blast before the next social media post about that specific event. And we also learned that they also get their news and their content from BDSRA. They prefer the newsletter. Next slide, please. So let's get into content strategy. What does that look like? Well, it's ever evolving with social media. And when it comes to telling stories, there are a lot of different layers, puzzle pieces, I like to say. And I try to use the approach, I think it's important to use the approach to do one layer, one puzzle piece at a time. There are a lot of different puzzle pieces to the rare disease journey, from diagnosis to the everyday reality of living with a rare disease or living with someone who has a rare disease, fights with insurance coverage, advocacy, grief. There's a lot to unpack. And there's a lot of different chapters and stories that you can tell. And determining the most effective way to tell these stories and to put those puzzle pieces together can be very challenging. On one hand, you have content that your community, you want to produce content, like I said, that your community cares about, but you also have to advertise events and resources that they may not know about, and you have to do that in a very compelling way. So a piece of advice I have is to be fluid and have an open mind, because you never know where and when you'll find inspiration, and an idea that you had may turn out to be something completely different than what you had originally envisioned. Few examples I have, when we had our annual family conference in Denton, Texas, I did a travel vlog. I showed, kind of put my bag in the car, being at the Columbus, Ohio airport, being in the air, the Dallas airport, then getting to the hotel. And really, it was kind of like a fun video that I wanted to do, but I also kind of was thinking, like, for those flying to Texas, like if they see what the Dallas airport looks like, if they see what the lobby of the hotel where the conference is being held, if they see what that looks like, maybe it'll ease their, travel anxiety a little bit. Maybe, it'll put, some, they'll get to see it ahead of time, and they'll know what they're walking into. But doing a travel vlog like that was actually inspired by me being a professional wrestling fan, because some of the wrestlers that I follow have YouTube channels, and they've done travel vlogs similar to that. Before we had our annual family conference in July, we had a series called Why Conference Wednesdays, which featured families talking about why they attend our conference. And we tried to feature different perspectives. We had a bereaved father who still attends and explained why he still attends the conference, even though his daughter has passed away. We had a sibling who has been attending for the past 20 years and is one of the SIBS leaders of our SIBS program. And we also had a new family who first attended in 2022. And the whole point was to inspire other families to go. Like, these were their perspectives. Here's why, maybe you would want to attend. So that was actually inspired by West Virginia University would have a series similar to where it was like Why WVU, and it would feature students about why they decided to attend West Virginia University. And the last example I'll mention is I did an interview with the Every Life Foundation's Annie Kennedy last month about newborn screening awareness. It was part of the content for Newborn Screening Awareness Month. And what I had originally intended was to have video clips, short video clips from that interview, kind of detailing the most important points that she made. And then in that 40+ minute conversation, it was kind of apparent that, hey, this whole conversation is very important. So I ended up just kind of putting the 40+ minute conversation on our YouTube channel and encouraged families to go check it out. Another piece of advice I have is to find a niche, and that can be and that can help, better help you organize your content and your strategy. I mean, it could be something like Newborn Screening Awareness Month. It can be if your rare disease has an awareness day. We posted pictures we had from our conference of families smiling, for World Smile Day this past Friday. We had, Grief Awareness Month, Nonprofit Day, or even if your organization is making a new hire or a family is making the news, or maybe there's a major advocacy event that you have families participating in, those can better help you organize your content strategy. And also, don't be afraid of trial and error because everything you do is a learning experience. More so recently, we discovered from the virtual event survey and the communication preferences survey that, posting things in the evening, because some families preferred for events to be held in the evening, has led to higher engagement on some more recent social media posts. So, and also don't be afraid to get excited and to get a little crazy for big announcements and have some fun with it. When we hired our head of research and medical affairs, it's something that we kind of we took something and ran with it. We had a video, announcement, we had a press release, we had a Q&A with her, we had a video of her colleagues wishing her well. It was one of those announcements that had been desired by our community for a long time, and it really was a long time coming. So don't be afraid to kind of blow it out and have some fun with it. Next slide, please. So let's get into the how. Again, I think it's extremely important to highlight your organization and with consent from your community to put faces to the name and your rare disease community. Let people know who you are as an organization, as a community, and as a rare disease. So our posts typically have, at least one of these things, whether it's a static graphic, a short video, which since attention spans can be short, you want to try to keep them as brief as you can. If it's 15, 30, 45, no more than a minute, if possible. And also, photos is another example. Articles, whenever we write an article or we share a link, we try to, again, have a photo or a video posted to social media. Really, what we believe is that these visuals help with, attention getting, with attention, their attention grabbing. And all this content on social media can further help build trust with your community and can help them along their rare journeys in general. What I said earlier about highlighting your resources and events to build trust. Well, you can do that through highlight videos. We did a highlight video for a conference. We do highlight videos from some of our virtual parties that are centered around holidays, the travel blog, as I mentioned. Maybe you have stories about how family grants have impacted families and how much they meant to them. I mentioned earlier keeping your community up to date, and you can do that through if you're attending a conference or some kind of event, maybe record yourself on your phone talking about what you learned from it. That's what we did recently when our president and CEO, Amy Fenton Parker, and Dr. Innika Whiteman, who we recently hired, traveled to the NCL conference in Germany. And they posted videos from 2 days, and what they learned, we posted it in the evening, and they generated a lot of engagement. We've also done similar videos with our series called Toolbox Tuesday, where we have different advocacy videos and resources that we spotlight. And again, you can help your community out by helping them put more faces to the name. We recently had a grief chat, and we had 3 different sessions, and three different people leading those sessions. So we had them submit a video talking about which session they're leading, encouraging people to join, and their connection to the Batten community. And even another example is our T-shirt design contest winner. We had one for our Awareness Day, and we thought it was a good idea to spotlight the person behind the design for the T-shirts for our Awareness Day on June 9th. When your audience watches these highlight videos and when they see smiling faces from the community and they hear about the impact of events or grants, then they themselves may want to join the fund. They may want to join the mission and get involved in any way they can now that they know more. And in turn, that can lead to higher participation, engagement, more followers. And once you build trust, your audience may feel more comfortable to ask questions, which in the end can help you improve your approach and strategy. So in the end, visuals can really help your audience familiarize themselves with the community and get them to want to learn more. Lastly, telling your story can be effective and rewarding, and we are extremely grateful for those who have. But we do know that it can take a lot out of you. It's not easy to do. So we always encourage people to tell their stories, but we don't want to force them, especially if it's something that they have to be on camera for. We always say, tell your story when you're ready. And if you want to wait, then that is perfectly okay. I cannot emphasize that enough. But when you are ready, just know that there are plenty of resources waiting for you and people who are more than happy to help you out. That is all I have. Thank you to Brenda. Thank you to Every Life Foundation for having me on. I also want to thank our wonderful staff at BDSRA, our BAT community. They've been incredible to work with, and our social media presence wouldn't be what it is without them. And also TDG Brand Marketing and Design. They have been instrumental in helping us with our rebrand over a year ago, and to helping make some of those graphics and Toolbox Tuesdays videos. And they just provide just great insight. So thank you all.
Thank you, Patrick. And there's Patrick's contact info. We really appreciate you sharing your insights. I love your comment about finding inspiration anywhere. I think that's so true, and can really, just think out of the box and grab an inspiration from wherever it comes from. Okay. Next up, I want to introduce our next speaker, Topaz Winters. She is a writer and disability advocate, and she's going to talk to us about the power of a mailing list to share personal stories of rare disease. She started her blog and newsletter back in 2013 and has found it to be a really beautiful platform to share her experience with diagnosis and treatment, particularly one in which her audience feels safe and comfortable responding with their stories in a more private setting via email versus social media platform. Welcome, Topaz. You want to unmute yourself? I will give you the floor.
Perfect. Thank you, Margot. Sorry, my electricity just went out, so I hope everyone can hear me okay still. My name is Topaz. I am the newest member of the Every Life Foundation communications team, and I am so honored to be here, especially following Sarah and Patrick's incredible stories. So one thing that you need to know about me, and one thing that if you know me, you know that when I was 13 years old, all I wanted to do in the world was be a writer. I had no literary education. I had no knowledge of the industry. I just had a love of books and the internet connection. So I decided to start what would become a decade-long odyssey, and that was a WordPress blog where I was determined to grow my writing skills and just find a worldwide community of readers. So I committed to writing a short story, an essay, or a poem every single day to document my progress as a writer and just to reach people who liked my style and liked my point of view. So in 2013, this is what that blog looked like. This is the first iteration of the blog. It was at the URL topazwinters.com, and this is, you can see that I have my blog, and then I was recording music, I was writing, and I just wanted to have a presence online. Next slide, please. So the thing about writing every single day, when you're writing every single day, content becomes really scarce. And so it's easy in the beginning to think of unique ideas for every post, but especially as the weeks and the months wear on, sometimes the only thing that is left to talk about is the day-to-day. That said, I found that my very slowly growing fan base actually loved when I just wrote about school, my friends, my parents, the process of recording the folk music album I was working on, the novels I was reading, the novels I was writing. So I started using the blog less as a promotional medium and more as a diary. I was telling the stories of my everyday and all of its wonder and all of its terror. And so the poetry and fiction did remain on the blog, but actually most of the content became daily personal essays. So this is what it looked like in 2014. Next slide. It was in this diary format that I began writing about feeling exhausted all the time. I began writing about losing interest in the things that had once lit me up, experiencing panic attacks just by stepping out of my house. The novel and the album that I've been working on for years and years fell to the back burner. I had once been religious about practicing my instruments, my piano and guitar, but every time I touched an instrument now, my ears just screamed with pain and I had no idea why. But I was still determined to write a blog post every single day. So the topics of my essays began to change to the merry-go-round of symptoms and tests and doctors and specialists that had just become my everyday life. Next slide. So in 2015, I had been writing the blog for about 2 years and I had about 2,000 followers. So this is what a lot of my essays looked like. I said things like, sometimes I just have these days where I get intensely, paralyzingly sad for no particular reason at all, and then I can't go anywhere or do anything aside from sitting in my room and crying really hard. My parents scheduled a blood test for me on Saturday just to see if I have a mineral deficiency or something physiological that might be causing the perpetual sadness, plus random bouts of crying, plus panic attacks deal. I came home today, and for some reason, my brain hates me because I have zero motivation to do anything. It's 8:30 p.m. as I'm writing this, and I just kind of feel like sitting around until the clock strikes 9, and it's socially acceptable to go to bed. I don't want to read, I don't want to write, I don't want to do homework, I don't want to play guitar, I don't even know what I want to do. So those of you who are familiar with mental health struggles may know exactly what I'm describing here. But at the time, none of these were symptoms to me. They were just descriptions of my day-to-day life. And reading these excerpts that I wrote around the ages of 15 and 16 is pretty poignant now. Next slide. I eventually received my first general diagnoses, which were major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder, and that helped. The daily essays that I started writing on the blog were a little bit less panicked. They were a little bit more certain of myself. I wrote about learning how to manage panic attacks, about experiencing depersonalization for the first time, about the best and the worst advice I received from my many series of therapists. And then came hyperacusis, which was my first rare disease. And it was only with this diagnosis that something really interesting began to happen. My blog follower count started to climb, and it climbed very slowly at first, and then it started to really, really rise very fast. So as I mentioned in 2015, I was at about 2,000 followers. And then by the end of 2015, I had reached 10,000 followers. And that was just because I was writing suddenly about this rare disease called hyperacusis. Next slide. So I'm sure that part of us was a sense of trauma porn. And for those of you who might not be familiar with the term, I'm talking about the commercialization of trauma for the masses. Because as much as we hate to admit it, we do like to partake in other people's suffering. And that's true, but I think I would also argue that a larger and much more important part was the formation of a community around these illnesses that I was figuring out for myself in real time. It was 2016. I had 3 illnesses that the world knew about, and I had one that nobody had ever heard of. And I think it's telling that it was only when I began openly writing about the ups and downs of hyperacusis specifically that my audience started growing organically, and I finally started to feel a little bit less alone in my struggles. Next slide. So this is what the blog looked like in 2013. And by this time, I'd gained enough followers and enough life experiences to find it a bit difficult to be as vulnerable as I used to be online. Every post I wrote had hundreds of comments, and those ranged from messages of support and solidarity to accusations of faking my illnesses to requests to cure other people's ailments. So at first, I tried to close the comment section on the blog, but then I just felt like I was depriving my readers of the community that they were seeking out in me. But even so, the intention was really quickly becoming overwhelming. At this point, I was 19 years old. I had not really lived a life yet, but I knew I had to find a different strategy to just avoid growing closed off in the public eye. It was really important to me to still tell my stories about illness, but I wasn't sure how to do that while also protecting the rawness of the work that I was creating and the experiences that I was going through. So I decided to shut down my blog completely, and I moved my essays to an email newsletter format. Next slide, please. So this is the sign-up form for my newsletter looks like today. And I found that my community paradoxically actually really opened up when I switched to the more private format of the newsletter. Only those who are actively invested in my illness journey bothered to open my emails. And I found that readers were willing to reply to my essays and share their own stories with much more freedom when they knew that I was the only one that was reading. So it was in this way that I finally found balance between the vulnerability that I believe is so important when speaking about rare disease and protecting the rawness of my personal stories. Next slide. Okay, so how exactly did I build a community in the newsletter format? I think it came down to 3 principles, and those 3 are what I want to share with you today. Number 1 being writing consistent and compelling content. Number 2 being encouraging audience interaction. And number 3 being continuing the conversation outside of email. Next slide. So I want to start by talking about what I believe is the most important component of any storytelling strategy, and that is the content. And Sarah and Patrick really beautifully touched on this earlier, but I kind of want to drill more into that. I haven't written on my blog every single day or on my newsletter every single day since about 2016. And I think that at the beginning, it was a really beautiful way to spur my writing career, spur my growth as a writer, but I did quickly find that strategy turned unsustainable. I was writing more and more filler content instead of well-considered work that I could be proud of sending to tens of thousands. 2017 and 2018, I dialed back to writing one longer essay per week. And then when I got to university, I switched to once per month. And what I discovered was that the frequency of the content you send to your subscribers actually matters a lot less than the consistency and the quality. My email opens and engagement rose when I sent fewer emails that I was prouder of. And there's also a really important element of content creation specifically around rare disease and disability that I think very few people talk about. And that's just the absolute exhaustion that comes with the need to be constantly vulnerable online. To combat that, I really intentionally diversified my content, and I tried to ensure that I kept my signature writing style. So you can see an example of that style in this excerpt from an essay on last month, on losing an important relationship while gaining a new rare disease diagnosis. And now when I'm sort of in this place in my newsletter journey, no matter what topic I write about, my readers know the instant they open an email from me, my voice is so distinct and my branding of the emails is so distinct. This gives me breathing room to write about other facets of my life on top of rare disease, because no one's whole life is rare disease. And that way I don't feel like I'm writing myself into a box. I feel like I can be a whole person in the span of these newsletters, rather than feeling the need to be a diagnosis and a poster child for a diagnosis. The bottom line is that when readers know that they'll receive an email at the same time every week or the same time every month, and that the email will be to the same standard and the same quality every single time, opens and engagement are going to rise from there. Next slide. So the next strategy to keep in mind is to encourage audience interaction in your emails. And this can be as complex as coming up with a new question related to every email, which I know that some writers do with very great success. Or on the other hand, it can be as simple as asking readers to reply with a line about what thoughts and feelings the newsletter sparked in them. I found that both strategies can very much yield useful results. The former can tell you a lot about your audience's pain points and what they need from you, versus the latter can be an open forum where they can share moments from their own lives, which can build trust with you as the writer. I usually use a combination of both of those strategies, and I do that in the form of a PS at the end of the essay, and that way I'm not interrupting the essay by sort of asking folks to interact with the essay. A few of those notes look like this. I say, if you have a moment today, it would mean the world to me if you clicked reply to this email and let me know your thoughts. What's the tenderest thing that happened to you today? Or I say, what are you running towards right now? What are you bringing with you? What are you leaving behind? How are you faring these days? Are you taking care of yourself and the people around you? What is your heart yearning for? And all of these are just really, really simple questions. And again, they're really in my sort of this distinct style of writing. And that allows readers to answer in as long or as short a format as they want, so they can build a connection with me as the writer. So by actively and intentionally encouraging audience interaction, you can build rapport and you can create personal relationships with your readers that strengthen their loyalty to your work and your persona. Next slide. The last piece of advice I have for cultivating community around a newsletter is to take the conversation outside of email. While the medium can be super valuable in having one-on-one interactions with readers, I've also found that resharing your newsletters on social media or even reading them at live events can be fruitful ground for your audience to not only connect with you, but to connect with each other. I'll usually share short excerpts from my newsletters on social media. And honestly, those comments both remind me that the work that I do has meaning, but they also help my readers find each other and build community. So these are some of the responses that I've received from readers on social media in the past few months. And it made me really happy when Sarah shared her comments, because I think we have a very similar experience of like, when you bring this stuff to the public, people really respond. People say things like, I live every day looking forward to the next letter from Topaz Winters. As a fellow queer and disabled Asian, you're writing something of a beacon for me. I've been thinking about about this since I read it from your newsletter this morning. Here's something heartbreaking and true. Somehow Topaz never fails to unlock the most beautiful pain and empathy. And these are really moments that I collect and that matter a lot to me as an artist, but also matter a lot to my community, because when people are sharing this in public, they are able to sort of find each other and reach out to each other without my influence. Next slide. So in 2023, this is what my website now looks like. I've come a really long way from the 13-year-old who just wanted to be a writer, and I'm so wildly grateful for the community that's formed around my personal stories of illness and disability. And yeah, I'm really hopeful that these guidelines might also help you tell your stories in your own newsletters and on social media with vulnerability and with grace. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Topaz. We really appreciate you sharing your story and reminding us that your diagnosis doesn't have to define your story, but it can just be part of your story. Now, let us introduce our final speaker. We have Brenda Colmenares, who is the Associate Director of Communications at Every Life Foundation, and a rare disease patient herself. And I am lucky enough to have both Brenda on a team with me and also Topaz, who is part of our communications team. Just a real superstar lineup. So Brenda was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis. She has a passion for storytelling and sharing compelling content that creates engagement and reaches new audiences. So welcome, Brenda. I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. So as Margot said, I'm a rare disease patient, and I'm really amazed by all these presentations and testimonies, because 7 years ago, when I was first diagnosed, I had no idea what it meant to have a rare disease or to be an advocate. Because of my communications background, I've always been drawn to real stories as a way to connect. And when I first got myasthenia, got diagnosed with myasthenia, no one in my close circle knew what it was or had even heard of it. And this was, of course, very overwhelming and isolating. So my first outreach was through social media. So I went on Facebook and searched for people who were going through the same as I was. And surprisingly, I found an entire community of rare disease patients like me looking for answers and for support. So I always kind of say Facebook saved my life, because at the time I was on a treatment that wasn't fully working for me. Yes, it was helping with myasthenia gravis symptoms, but it gave me all these new side effects that were making it really hard for me to live a normal life. So I went on myasthenia gravis Facebook group and I shared my experience with the community. This was a first for me. And I got so many answers and great advice on treatments that I should bring up on my next doctor visit. And believe it or not, the treatment they suggested actually put me into remission. So here in the slide, you can actually see the real Facebook post from a couple of years ago. I read from a person called Donna, who probably has no idea the impact her shared experience had on me. And basically in the post, she says that she has the same type of MG that I have, and that I should be taking an infusion called Rituxan and nothing else. And that's actually what I did. And Donna, wherever you are, thank you so much. So for me, this experience actually confirmed the fact that sharing your story does matter and it does make a difference. So maybe there are some of you here who don't feel comfortable sharing your story publicly on social media, and that's okay, because there are many ways you can actually take action or get involved. Like in my case, I was a rare disease patient who found someone else's story that actually changed my life. Next slide, please. To give you another example, when I joined the Every Life Foundation back in 2019, I was excited to attend my first Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill. And for those of you who don't know, this is an event hosted by the RDLA, which is the Rare Disease Legislative Advocates, a program of the Every Life Foundation. And it brings together rare disease advocates from across the country to make their voices heard by their members of Congress. And in this event, participants are educated on policy proposals impacting the community, and then they have the opportunity to advocate for policy changes directly to their members of Congress. So it really, really doesn't matter your connection to rare disease or your advocacy experience level. Everyone is welcome. Like, I know this sounds overwhelming, members of Congress, policy, that's too much for me, but it really will walk you through it. During Rare Disease Week, I had the opportunity to meet hundreds of advocates, including those part of the myasthenia gravis community, and I got to learn about their struggles and triumphs during their journeys. And this was the first time I actually met other people with my same disease, so it was an amazing experience. Next slide, please. So during the meetings with our members of Congress, I got to experience firsthand the power of sharing stories with a purpose. Being in person and meeting your member creates that special connection, making it easier to advocate for your needs and follow up with them afterwards via social or via an email. So if you search hashtag RareDC 2023, or Rare DC 2022 and go back a few years on any social media platform, you'll find hundreds of photos and testimonies of advocates sharing their experience during the event. And here I added a few examples. And again, you don't necessarily need to tell your entire story if you're not comfortable. So just a few tips. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. I think Sarah mentioned a little bit about this. Like I said in the beginning, it was reading about other people's vulnerabilities and honesty that helped my situation and gave me strength to know that I wasn't alone. So if you are advocating for a specific cause, make sure you include data and facts in your posts, again, along with your story to catch people's attentions. Remember, not everyone is familiar with your rare disease, so it's okay to educate them and provide background, links, studies, etc. Tag anyone who you think can help spread the word. When advocates share pictures of themselves, this is a great opportunity to tag your member of Congress and thank them afterwards for meeting with you. If you're lucky, they'll like the post, share the post, and this will, of course, bring awareness to your disease or your specific ask. And then when I say influencers, I don't mean tagging Kim Kardashian necessarily, but there are rare disease advocates who have like a large following and they can help spread awareness as well. One like, one share can go a long way. And then finally, just have fun. I don't know if you can see, but Judy, she's far to the right. She is amazing at creating fun content on TikTok. She sings, she dances, and then she also shares her story and throws like that impactful data. So that keeps people engaged. So your reasons for attending this webinar might be unique, but either way, we want you to be able to put what you learned today into practice. So whether you feel comfortable sharing your personal journey on blogs or a social media channel, whether you are part of an organization and want to promote your content, or if you're someone like me who was looking to find support from the community and ended up meeting with my member of Congress. So that wasn't bad at all. Next slide, please. So on that note, Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill 2024 will take place on February 25th to February 28th. And the great news is that travel reimbursement applications are now open. So if you're interested, please apply and hopefully we'll see you next year. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Brenda. There are some great ways to engage with the rare disease community. And I love your comment, Brenda, that I mean, sometimes we feel like Facebook is sort of a cesspool, but so many good things can happen on there. I've had a similar experience with finding community around rare disease, and you just feel not so alone when you can connect with people. So whether it's Facebook or participating in Rare Disease Week or a virtual RDLA event, I think those are all worthwhile, and we really appreciate your comments. We have just about 4 minutes left. There are a few questions we'll start with in the Q&A. We'll try to get through as many as we can. Here's one about hashtags. What is the current status of hashtags given the erosion of Twitter and X and the rise of other platforms? Are they still used and relevant? And is there a way to register hashtags? Anybody itching to answer that one?
I can jump in on that one because I do use those, especially when it comes to TikTok. It's honestly, it's still really important. It's also really important to keep them purposeful. It's hard to not let it get drowned out with the most common things. But if you have it just unique enough, I think Brenda gave a perfect example, especially if it's event forward, like to be able to say, oh, I went to this specific conference for this thing, and they had a hashtag for you to use. Being able to tag that keeps you within that network of people. I use one for myself on Instagram. It's hashtag rare million because my disease affects 1 in 100,000 to 1 million. And most of the posts that I put up that have anything to do, whether it's education, advocacy, upcoming event that has to do with my organization, I always put hashtag rare million. So I have saturated that and have gotten a couple other people within my community to use that. It really helps. We just had a recent conference for our group, and we had Facing the Future together. Having taglines, things like that, make it very purposeful, very easy for people to search, especially if, say, they missed the event, but they wanted to see what's happening, the people that were involved. It is still really important, and it is very purposeful, especially with the TikTok community, because that's also how you get seen. And occasionally get put up on a For You page. And you don't always need to go viral. Sometimes those hashtags are actually what gets you those likes and views and outreach and community. And I found more purposeful comments coming in on my content because of that.
Yeah, I think Sarah is spot on with all that, especially with like the event hashtags, because we have done that with, yeah, it was very easy to kind of like look at posts from Rare Disease Week, you know, with that hashtag, and we've done a similar thing with our like our BDSRA annual family conference back in July. And also from like an organizational perspective too. I mean, if you have your own as like an organization, I mean, we had one when we rebranded hashtag Batten Advocates for a Cure, and we use that on just about everything when it comes to, you know, X, Instagram, LinkedIn. You're not really on Facebook, but you know, we put it on everything we do on those other channels.
Great. Thanks for the insight. I think we have time for one more. This one is for Topaz. It says, thanks for sharing your knowledge. Which email platform do you use for your newsletters?
Yeah, so I have used MailChimp from the very beginning of my personal newsletter. I have experimented with a few other platforms. So for a literary magazine that I run, we use Substack, and we really love that. I've also used ConvertKit here and there. I think it's really going to depend on what your priorities are. I like MailChimp because I don't really like coding. It's not something that I want to think about. I want to focus on the content, and MailChimp keeps that really easy for me. ConvertKit is a little bit more complicated, but you also have a lot more options for personalization. It's also a little bit more expensive, and Substack is free. would say that it's probably the least, you can customize the look of it the least. So it really depends on what your felt the easiest and the most accessible to me.
Great. Thank you. Thanks to all of our panelists. We really appreciate you taking the time to share your story and your insights on what makes a story compelling and how to get yours out there into the world. Someone asked when Rare Disease Week is. It is coming up the week of February 26th. We would love for you to be involved. Please follow us at Rare Advocates, and you can keep in touch. We will look forward to seeing you at another RDLA webinar very soon. Until then, take care, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.